For joining us this evening. Hopefully looking forward to a good session where we share a bunch of information and answer some of your questions. We are recording this, so we'll be able to put this out later, so you don't need to take notes. If you want to come back and look at the screens and different things like that, it will be available. And at the end of this, we'll probably put together a frequently asked questions. We're probably not going to be able to answer all of the questions you asked, but we will we'll get a document that goes over this webinar, and then we did a similar one for sophomores through seniors. So we'll kind of look at some of the questions that generate from those and put together a document. But again, my name is Paul Waechtler. I'm the principal of the Northfield campus. It's wonderful to have you. Welcome to the class of 2024. Really looking forward to you having a great school year this coming time, and know that 8th grade was a little different than you were probably expecting. I have an 8th grade daughter myself, so I know some of the disappointment, but really looking forward to making your freshman year and your transition to high school as good as humanly possible. We have Gail Gamrath, the assistant principal here, to help moderate, and then Superintendent Paul Sally and I are going to share a bunch of information. So with that, why don't we just get started, and I'll turn it over to Paul for the first part of this.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks everybody for joining us, and I'll add my welcome to the class of 2024 and parents as well. Great to have you on board, and really look forward to seeing you in the fall, and we're working hard to make all of that happen. And I want to just start a little bit with an overview, and then we'll get into some of the specifics of what we've done and what we're talking about. And one of the things that we'd like you to do is, if you have questions, please use the Q&A and enter those questions. We have a couple of additional administrators here. Nikki Dizon, our Director of Communications, Michael Moras, our Chief Technology Officer, is also on, who will help to monitor that and keep this moving forward and answer as many questions as we can. So we actually have 8 committees that are moving forward with our work. And Paul, if you could get to the next slide, it just sort of blows that up just a little bit. And we're going to talk a lot about schedules and some of the teaching and technology and professional development that we're working on in order to make school happen for you in the fall. You can see that we care about student health and staff mental health and support. So your health and well-being is absolutely critical. We know that communication is really important. We know that extracurriculars are often some of the best things that kids do in high school. So we're working to make sure we can offer a robust program for extracurriculars. And then just how it all fits together with logistics, and there are a lot of logistics. So that's just to give you that overview of things that we've done. But let me tell you a little bit about what our main considerations are. So the number one piece is the health and well-being of students, staff, and their families. That is a guiding principle for every one of these committees. We want to have as many kids in school as we can safely. We think that in-person learning is really so important, but we know that we're going to be constrained by different things at different times during the school year. So our second focus is really on that effective teaching and learning, and I'll talk some more about that in a minute. And then the third piece is that the mandates and guidance that comes from the Illinois State Board of Education, as well as the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Governor's Office, are key components for us. As many of you may know, they recently, 2 days ago, put out some new guidance as we move into phase 4 of Restore Illinois. And we're processing that in terms of how to manage, again, the health and well-being of students and staff and families, and effective teaching and learning. So you'll hear more from us as in the coming weeks as we really put our plans in place for the fall. So as we talk about our plans for the fall, we have a few different scenarios or modes of operation that we're talking about that we're planning for. And each one of those committees is looking at each one of these and making sure that we have a plan that's flexible and can really move back and forth between these different scenarios or modes of operation. So I'm going to just talk through them just quickly. One is all in school. So we actually know that even when we say all in school, we know that there'll be some students and some staff that do need to be at home until we get into phase 5, until there's a vaccine or more significant treatment for COVID-19. So we're preparing, even though it says all in school, that part of that is that we'll have some students and staff who need to be at home for health reasons for their own or their family. The second mode of operation is a hybrid, and this is where we'll have some students in school for a period of time, some students remote during that same time, and then we'd flip-flop and have the students who are remote come in, and those that were in school learn remotely. And this is one where, because of some of the constraints that we have, because of our large high school, because of the number of students that'll be on campus at Northfield, we cannot really socially distance throughout the building with 1,000 kids on campus. So we're working through what that would look like, and are developing ideas to have, again, back to those main pieces, which are the health and well-being of student staff and their families, and effective teaching and learning. The third mode of operation is all remote. It may be something that we end up needing to use this year. And one of the things that we're really focused on is we're focused on having an effective, very effective, all remote teaching and learning plan. It is our obligation to make sure that we can effectively teach the students in all the disciplines that we have. So what we know is that when we have a good all remote plan, the hybrid plan starts to just sort of fall out nicely. Yes, some students are in school, in classrooms, and that's fantastic. And those that are remote are experiencing a strong curriculum. And when students are all in school, it would even be more of a bonus. We see every student that we can get in school for a period of time as important and something that we're working toward. And then the last piece is switching between these 3 different modes of operation. This is something that's likely that will be in different phases at different times during the school year. So we're trying to ensure that our plans in each of these 8 groups are flexible enough and appropriate for each of those scenarios. One of the things that I'll give you a quick glimpse into is the work that we're starting to do. We have spent a great deal of time since we've actually been in remote learning starting in mid-March. But certainly as we started to learn our lessons from 4th quarter and then start to dive into our work this summer, we have developed some remote learning standards of practice that a large committee has been working on, and you can see the different components of this, and there is more information on our website as well in terms of what each of these break down into. But you can see that the first thing that's on the list is building relationships with students, and we 100% know and believe that it's those relationships that makes that teacher-student learning so strong, and we value that. So one of our dispositions is to make sure that our plans are really promoting building those relationships. You can see it down in the right-hand corner as well with create communities of learning. That's about relationships as well. But then you see sort of our learning management system with Canvas, the routines that are important to put in place when remote learning, the kinds of instructional strategies and professional development that our teachers need, as well as different assessment and most importantly, just the feedback cycle for students, what they've learned, where they need to continue to grow, and what additional support they might need as they move forward in that particular class. So again, there's more information on our website about those, and we actually will be continuing to build those out and enhancing that information on the website.
All right.
Paul, do you see anything else to add to those pieces?
No, I think that's good. I think the biggest question people probably have is, what are you going to do in August 24th or whatever? And of course, we don't quite know, but we're doing a lot of work to have the best plans we can for the situation we're in, and we'll be waiting to make that decision, as the time approaches.
Yeah, so a quick note on that. Absolutely. We want to know as soon as we can so families can know, but we don't want to. The situation is ever evolving. So right now we're planning for contingencies. At our July 13th board meeting, we'll be sharing more information with the board. We hope at that time we actually can commit to when we might make a final decision, because at some point everybody needs to move forward and plan. And again, as I noted at the beginning, we'll be moving through phases of this. So it may be that, especially bringing students in, we need to start slowly to make sure we can keep them safe within our school in the current situation. So more information starting with the July 13th board meeting, and then after that as well. Yeah,
we'll have plenty of additional communications over the summer to keep the community and students and parents well informed of our thinking and what we're hoping for the first days of school. So one of the subcommittees that Paul was talking about was about the schedule. We learned pretty quickly in the spring that our traditional schedule was really difficult and remote, and we want to be flexible. So we had a committee that started meeting a whole bunch of times in the spring to figure out what do we need to do next year to be as flexible as possible, deliver a great education to our students, regardless of the situation that we're in. And so let me just go through here. And so we have 3 different days that I'm just going to highlight here and kind of walk through. So a Trevian day is going to look pretty much like our traditional schedule. Periods are 35 minutes long as opposed to 40. I'll explain that in just a second. Advisor room's a little bit shorter, but we have those Trevian days. We're going to meet on Mondays, and that will happen going through every single class that you would have typically. Then we're going to have more of a block schedule. And so we're going to do a blue day on Tuesdays and Thursdays and a green day on Wednesday and Fridays. And so basically half of your classes would be meeting during those times for a longer period of time. So you have a 70 minutes, so roughly twice as long as our typical period going through that. And you will, of course, then have the benefit of not having as many classes. You'll be able to go deeper into the curriculum during those times. And that's going to be one of the bonuses of that block schedule. I know before people had a lot of, we say embedded lunch, and people have had a variety of questions on what embedded lunch means. So I'm going to try to walk through that with some examples here. So one, typically lunch takes up a period of our day. And so when you embed a lunch, it no longer takes up a period of your day. You don't have to have lunch during, say, period 4, 5, or 6, the way we traditionally do. You can see here lunch is embedded in period 5 on Trevian days, embedded in period 3 on blue days, and embedded in period 8 on green days. And what that means is, let's just look at, say, block 5A. You're going to have a class. Let's say you have a kinetic wellness class to start period 5. You're then going to go eat lunch, and then you're going to actually have a little break. You're going to have a free period. We have 5A, B, and C because we need to serve kids during 3 separate lunch periods based on how large our student body is, which is the reason period 5 is 110 minutes as opposed to 35. Doesn't mean you're in class for 110 minutes. It just means we can then cycle through basically 3 different lunch periods and still offer class during that time. If you look at block 3, it's very similar. You have 115 minutes now, and you're going to either have lunch and your class during that time if you're scheduled for period 3. That class may meet after you eat lunch, it may meet before you eat lunch, or if you look at cell 3B, it may meet for 35 minutes, then take a break for lunch, and then meet after that for the 35 minutes. So you still get 70 minutes of class time, but your lunch was in the middle of that time. Obviously, we're going to be careful with what classes we do that. Kinetic wellness is probably not a great one to do 30 minutes of activity, eat lunch, and then go back to 35 minutes of more activity. But there are some that are thinking, hey, that would work well for my curriculum, kind of a natural break for kids, and I can pick up afterwards. Our start times and the length of these are still exactly waiting to be determined, but we aren't going to start before 7:50 for advisor room, and we're not going to end later than 3:10 for the Northfield campus. So those times are kind of the longest it might be, and we're still tweaking some of the details to get that finally ironed out. We'll certainly communicate to you well before the first day of school what to expect. So let's kind of transition from what you did, if you remember way back in January, which seems like several years ago, quite frankly. You were at Academic Life Nights. We were going through how to build a schedule using our 9-period day. Mr. Tragos, Ms. Gamrath did a great job of giving you things to think about. We then had some conferences with families at your junior high to help you put together a schedule. So here's a pretty typical schedule. You have 5 core academic classes, so English, Spanish, world history, science, and math. You have a kinetic wellness class, and you have an elective. Lunch here would be period 4, 5, or 6. So on this one is period 4, is 5 days a week. And with this schedule, which has many bonuses, you do end up having 7 classes every day, and you have homework in 5 of those at least every evening. So it's just a lot for students to manage. If you look at the free periods you would have, so that would be here, period 7 has a study hall with the science lab. And so 3 days a week, you would have a study hall, 2 days a week, you would have science lab. If you spread that out over the entire week, it means you average 24 minutes a day where you're not scheduled. So our students are spending those 24 minutes seeing teachers, collaborating with other students on a group project, visiting our academic assistance center for some tutoring, trying to get some homework done, making up a test if they were absent the day before. So that's an awful lot to cram in to 24 minutes, which of course means they're studying a whole lot after school and doing all those things after their extracurricular activities, which is why many of them say obviously they're tired and a little stressed out. So it's a lot to go through for any person if you only had 24 kind of flexible minutes in your day. And so let's see how that schedule would translate into our schedule for next year. So Mondays are going to be Trevian days. So every class is going to meet, and we're going to have our kind of mostly traditional 9-period day with the 35-minute periods. Tuesday and Thursdays will be blue days. So advisor room through period 5 will meet. And then Wednesdays will be advisor room, and then 6 through 9 and an X block, and I'll explain the X block a little bit later in this presentation. But for this slide, let's look at a few things. So one, based on the embedded lunch, so period 5, 3, and 8, so 5 on Mondays, 3 on Tuesdays, and 8 on Wednesdays, every single student's going to have lunch. So you don't have to have it built into your schedule. It's just going to happen. You're going to be an A, B, or C slot, and you'll be able to do it. It does mean you actually have 3 different groups of people you might be eating lunch with, one on Mondays, one on Tuesdays and Thursdays, one on Wednesdays and Fridays, based on who else is available during those times. So that's gonna potentially feel different for kids. But again, one of the big bonuses of a schedule like this is if you look going in from Monday night to Tuesday, you now have probably 3, maybe 4 classes to prepare for rather than 7. And so your homework load, what might still be, significant, of course, but it's going to be more focused on just fewer classes. You're not going to have so many transitions to do. Then the same going Tuesday to Wednesday, you're again to have 3 or 4 classes to prepare for, as opposed to the 7 periods or 7 classes you would have during your traditional schedule. So we believe the homework that will be an assistance. Not that you'll spend drastically less time, but it'll just be easier to get deeper into a single subject each night. We will also have it. So let's just say, look at the math class, 9th period. Monday, they might give you a homework. You might do some work Monday night, but nothing's going to be due until that class meets again on a Wednesday. So that was one of the questions we have. We're not going to say, oh, even though we're not meeting, I'm going to expect you to turn in work on Canvas or or something like that. So it's the next time you meet is when things will be due, allowing you to kind of manage your day like that. And then one of the other big bonuses is the unscheduled time. So the 24 minutes that you had previously is now going to be 60 minutes on average per day. The reason being that now lunch does not take up a period, which actually gives you a free period. So if you look in this Monday Trevian Day, you have this free period, period 7. It wasn't free before. And that gives you just additional time to do all those things that I talked about. If you're struggling in class, you can go see a teacher, you can go to the Academic Assistance Center, you can get some homework done as you get ready for all your extracurricular activities after school. You can collaborate with students to finish up that group project. All of those things that our kids feel really pressured to do in such a busy day are now just going to be, they're going to have more flexibility to get that done during the week. That we're really hoping that's one of the big bonuses of that, certainly leading to less stress. Another thing on this slide we really want to point out is the science schedule. And so science here on Trevian days is going to meet for a single period. So period 6 is science. If you remember before, it said science lab on period 7. During the Trevian days, that's just going to be a free period. Free might be a study hall at the Northfield campus, but it'll certainly be time to get something done. The next time science will meet will be up over here. Wednesday morning, period 6 is going to meet. You'll have your science class. And then 7th, we're going to do half of 7. So 35 additional minutes, science lab will meet, and then you'll have a free period after that. That will be the same on Friday. You'll have half of the 7th period will be a science lab. The next one will be, the next 35 minutes will be free. So you do have that additional free time, but science does want that additional time, just like they have in our traditional schedule. So the labs will happen just during the block scheduling days, not during the Trevian days. That's one of the things to note, and one of the questions lots of people had is how is science gonna work? Let's look at a few other things on this schedule. So every class, so I pointed out math, but let's just say kinetic wellness, period 4, we'll meet then on blue days. So period 4 on Tuesday, period 4 on Thursday. So every class you look at meets 3 times a week. So it meets every Monday and then either blue days or green days. So 3 days a week for every one of the classes. One of the other things that we really wanted to make sure we served well is students with an IEP, so an individualized education plan. In our typical schedule, I'm just showing you the traditional schedule here, a sample for them. They have resource seminar, period 2, and that of course would meet every single day of the week. So they would have 5 days a week of support to make sure that they're getting the support needed to be successful. In the block schedule, you obviously, period 2 does not meet every day of the week. And so we wanted to make sure, how do we provide that same level of support that they had before? So if they needed to meet 5 times a week, how can we make that work? You'll see in this class, period 2 is still their resource seminar. Again, because we have that embedded lunch, it automatically makes everybody have a free period then. So this student we would schedule with a free period, period 7. And then as you notice when you go across the block, those periods 2 and 7 meet at the same time. So this student would get resource support the same time of day for the block schedule every Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday in the pairs. It says resource and then free. We did that intentionally, talking to our special education department. They did not feel like 70 minutes in resource seminar was the best use of the students' time. So having a daily touch is really important to them. So they wanted a daily touch to meet with the student every day, but thought 35 minutes would be enough, and then they'd have a free time for 35 minutes. So not for roughly half the period, they'll be able to go to study hall or get additional help from the AAC or other teachers, or just get some homework done. But that's why we divided that up into not a 70-minute period for the entire time, making sure we get the sort of the needs of that population. There have been a variety of questions about X block. So this end of the day on Wednesdays and Fridays, and how we're going to use that. Most block schedules have something like this embedded in it, often used for professional development time. So that's going to be a big emphasis for us is as we're switching to this, whatever state we're in and using a block schedule, our staff wants time to collaborate to make sure they're doing an excellent job and can learn from each other. That will be certainly a primary purpose. The student supports, We might have things just like office hours where all of our staff are expected to be available. Kids can just go get help from a teacher, those types of things. Other students, of course, making up tests will certainly be things that we look into. And then as time evolves, it's very possible we'll have some student programming that we put in there. If you have older students at New Trier, you know we have extended advisor rooms. I don't know that we want to change our schedule when we do that. We might just use part of the X block to help with registration for the advisors to meet with the students, do things like that also during the X block time. So we're looking at some creative uses of that, and certainly we'll share some additional information as we make those decisions during the summer. But we have lots of great ideas already of how to use that. And I think our staff and our students are excited to have that flexibility of the X block. One of the questions was, do I have to stay at school? So often you will not have to stay at school. The school day will be over. There's no office hours. The students would go home. But there certainly might be times where we have an extended advisor room where we have something else that we're doing where we're expecting students to be on campus. And we'll publish that well ahead of time so you can make plans accordingly. All right, so anything I missed there, Paul, that you want to add in on, and or you can start on this slide too.
I think that was good. I think that a lot of the questions are coming up, and I think we'll try and get to a bunch of those as we go through this next part of the discussion. So I'll hit on some of them, and as I just review these goals of the committee and some of the advantages that we really see to the block schedule, especially in sort of this different time that we're in, and helping students, staff, and families manage that. So I talked about a number of these already, but we wanted whatever schedule we came out with to work in all scenarios. We believe we do have a schedule that will work on all those scenarios. We'll talk a little bit more about hybrid and that thinking in just a minute. We wanted to make sure that we did not limit student opportunities, so retain the opportunities that they have requested. Paul mentioned meeting the students with IEPs, so we have something where we know we'll be able to work with a student each day if they're a student who needs that support each day. And so that'll be individualized. I think this promote the overall well-being for students and staff and families as well, but our students especially is really important. We've heard for many years about the stress that our students are under. We have our surveys which show that stress is increasing. There are surveys nationally about stress in communities like New Trier's, where the baseline stress level for our students is high. And we want to work to promote being able to manage that and the social emotional skills needed to manage that. So we're certainly doing a lot of that work, and the students that are on will experience that in each of their classes and in their advisor room. But in terms of sort of overall opportunities, that there have always been questions. Well, this means there's another free period maybe. Can I take another class? And that is antithetical to what we're trying to do with this. So first, we're trying to meet the needs of students and what they requested. So we feel good that we're not asking any student to give something up that they might not have otherwise. But we're not looking to load more on. We think that that this is a time to stay focused. And we think that's the other advantage of the block schedule, that, Paul mentioned it, we have kids that typically might take 7 classes, have 5 things for homework, have an extracurricular, want to spend time with their family and do things with friends. There's so much time switching that's going on in their day that we would rather promote deeper learning and deeper focus on those things. And we hope that what we can do is we can have some of that time during the day in addition, especially since we may be not all in school all the time. When a kid is in school, have that time to connect with teachers. That is one of the most fundamental parts of what we do at New Trier, is developing those relationships and helping students self-advocate, ask questions when they need help, and build that relationship. So that individual student-teacher interaction is so important. We also want to ensure that the commuting teachers and students, so there have been some questions about symphony orchestra and other classes, so our English language students do commute every day as well. So the schedule is going to accommodate all those needs of kids. And then we also want to make sure that we're providing the right professional development opportunities for our staff. They've undergone and we've transformed ourselves in really quite amazing ways, and we feel really good about where we are. But what we know is as we get into teaching and learning in a block schedule, as we get into different forms of remote learning, that professional development and that collaboration time is going to be essential to keep our curriculum and education strong. Some of the other advantages, you know, I think that, I think, Paul, you went over the 24 minutes, that if you haven't had a student at Nurture yet, that it might be difficult to sort of picture how all that works. But again, that time, kids are being asked to do all kinds of things in addition to just relax and make sure they are in a good place and rested for the learning they might do the rest of the day. That's why we're so happy that everybody will have a lunch in this schedule. We think that's time every kid should have. But beyond that 24 minutes, just as it's going to be better for our students, and I think we'll see that in when we sort of evaluate how we're doing with this model. We think that's going to support student well-being significantly, and continue the rigorous and strong education that our students have. We're not compromising on that in any way, and that's all the hard work that our teachers are doing now. I don't know if there are, if you want to show the yearly sort of plays out yearly, and then we'll get to some of those questions. Gail, is there other pieces?
I have a few things to say, but Paul, why don't you go ahead and talk about the yearly calendar first, and then we'll go.
Okay, sounds great. So, one, I realize I've seen this at least, hundreds of times, it feels like, so I know exactly what I'm looking at. And then if you're new to this, you're like, wow, that's a lot of information on this thing. So let me at least walk through some of this stuff. So this is a color-coded calendar of what is happening each day of the month for this part of the school year. So purple is Institute Day, so the August 24th, 25th, that's starting with purple. Yellow is Trevian Days, so that's the days where all of the classes meet. Then blue and green, of course, are the blue and green block schedule days, so hopefully that's pretty clear. Red are days off, so those are days where obviously we don't have school, so September 7th is Labor Day, so you can do those things. Got a couple other kind of oddball ones, but if you look in January, finals are kind of that deep blue, I'm going to say. Grading days, that brown. So a few other ones, but I don't want to get stuck in all of the details of that. But just to give you an idea, if that's what you're looking at is a color-coded calendar. We're showing you this. So one of the advantages of having a Trevian Day is you end up in this nice kind of routine where Tuesdays are always blue, Thursdays are always blue, Wednesdays and Fridays are always green. If you don't have school on Monday, which is a very common day for us to have off, then you can just not have the Trevian Day, and you can still keep the nice flow of it. Another really good reason to have Trevian Days is it increases student contact with the teacher time by 20%. And really what that means is over a two-week span, if you went with just blue and green, you would meet 5 times a week. If you have Trevians, you meet 6. And so that additional contact time is just really good for setting the course of the year, especially for freshman year, getting to know the kids, getting to know the classes. The more contact can really be beneficial, something we believe in. So that's another really nice part of the Trevian Days. It also makes you can just look at a month like September, just the flow is pretty good. Again, you have that sequence, you know exactly every Tuesday what it's going to be, every Wednesday what it's going to be is a green day, even when you have some days off. I will say that this is somewhat already outdated. So very recent information is November 3rd, Election Day, is going to be a school day also. So we will update this, some other decisions we need to make. So don't put this entirely into your calendar, but you can see how the months look really, really pretty nice. Again, February, March, if you look at March, is perfectly aligned with the days, which we just feel like is a good thing for the weekly pattern. Also allows a little bit more kind of student supports and programs. So again, that resource seminar, if you have a student in guided study or some of our other support programs, just allows additional touches for them. Make sure we're touching base on kids often enough to make sure they're getting the support they need so they can be successful.
So
the last part I was going to say with the X block is we don't have, if again you've been around Nutria a while, we don't have early release and late arrival days. Those will be eliminated, and we'll use the X block for some of that kind of staff development or things we need to do. So if you're using that option, we will no longer have those days in the calendar.
And then a couple other things, Paul, on the calendar. Thanks for mentioning November 3rd. They've also, in the new guidance that was just released, given districts district planning days around this. So they recognize the importance of that for students. So what our plan is at our July 13th board meeting, we will have a calendar approved by the board. So that's a point where we'll know what days are off, and we'll have that pattern of Trevian, blue, and green. So that's July 13th.
Great. So we'll be able to update and hopefully get you kind of a finalized version of this, unless something somehow changes between then and the beginning of school year, but going to finalize that up. So we've shared a ton of information. I am confident that there are questions that we might be able to also answer for you as we've gone through this. So Ms. Gamrath has been fantastically going along, looking at your questions and trying to summarize those for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Gail to kind of moderate this for us.
We have a lot of great questions. I'm ready to go. But I also wanted to just welcome you. I'm here at Northfield tonight, and I just am so excited. I know it's been a different go around for 8th graders. I have 2 8th graders myself, and I think, you know, as you get started here and you get excited about coming, there's a lot of things that will be staying the same. And we are busy right now putting our advisor rooms together. Our senior helpers are getting excited to welcome you. That might take place in a different format than our traditional openings, but they're all meant to meet and greet and get to know your fellow advisees. So we're working on those plans also. I'm dealing with our son right now, but we are looking at just working on articulation with some of your 8th grade departments. Each of our departments are working with the different departments curricularly in your whatever center school you're coming from. So we're meeting you where you're at. We know that everyone had an atypical 4th quarter with their classes, and so a lot of that work's being done right now too. So as we move to some of these questions, I think they kind of fall into a few different buckets here. So Paul, Sally, you answered a few of the questions about specific classes, but there's a few questions coming in on double period math classes or world studies. Did one of you want to take a little bit about what those will look like? Would they be back to back? 140 minutes of math in a row might be a little tough. I know you're a math guy, but
as a former math teacher, I agree.
Yeah. So so double period classes, we might we're going to be working with departments. So some of those will be meeting back to back. So I know world studies, so the English history team, as we've talking to those teachers, having those say periods 1 and 2. So 140 straight minutes is certainly a possibility. With that said, of course, they're going to be breaking things up and doing different things. And so I'm hoping that you will experience it and be like, wow, this actually went really smoothly. It was great. The activity is really good. I got really deep into something. I had enough time to do my group project, those types of things. There are some other classes I know, talking to double period math. They were talking about, say, offering it 2 and 7. And so you would have period 2 meeting with the class for 70 minutes on Tuesday, period 7 meeting for 70 minutes on Wednesday. And of course, it'd be split up, not back to back, also during the Trevian day. So that was something some of the departments were investigating, that the daily touch they felt was really good. And that 140 minutes might even be too much math straight for Dr. Sally there. So we are investigating different ones, what's going to work with the schedule, and what's going to best serve that classroom and that curriculum, and how the teachers are thinking about that with their department leaders.
So there's a lot of literature on and in fact experience within our school on running classes that are that long. So we have an IGSS program that meets for that long every day in a normal school day. And so we have some of that experience, and that's about activities, that's about breaks, that's about working in groups, that's about student presentation. It's a chance to develop a community in a pretty unique way. So it has advantages as well. For some other classes, it's of some concern. One, for example, that they're working on, which is a Winnetka campus, but it just gives you an example, is if you're going to have a double period dance class, that's a lot of dance in a row, and they want to be careful about that. So they're talking through, if they do double period, how do they do that next to each other, or do they do it by splitting it between days? So a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, we do have some definitely expertise on the campus, being a former physics teacher who taught summer school. So I had, I forget what the exact time is, but I think it was 5 hours a day to use. And again, there's just all kinds of ways to break that up with activities and different things that hopefully made the kids feel like, hey, this went by pretty quickly and was enjoyable, at least for 5 hours of physics during the summer. What else do we have, Gail?
So there are some questions, and I can just say this right openly. All the classes that you pick, we are going to be able to fit into the schedule. We are not looking to add any classes, because that defeats the great purpose of this schedule that can breathe and reduce some stress in different areas and go into more in-depth areas in some of the subjects. So just to alleviate any of the questions, commuting classes will still be able to commute. We've checked that, and we've run those different schedule scenarios. So we're good with all of that. So we're excited. I'm really excited about this schedule and how this will play out. I'm going to switch just a little bit to the hybrid learning. There's a lot of questions about how would this work? I know we don't have all the answers right now, but half in person, half at home. How are the teachers going to teach both? So if there's anything you can tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks for leading in with, we don't have all the answers yet. I think that we're working hard on all these questions, and have groups that are looking into them. So there's a couple things about the half and half. One is if we have to do that, there are certain things we don't want to have happen, and one is that it's half the curriculum of the year if we have to do that for an extended period of time. So our teachers are working on, how do you keep all students engaged in this way? And I'm going to suggest this is sort of the model to think about. So we're ready to have all kinds of great synchronous learning, asynchronous learning if we're remote. So one of the things we learned from our students from fourth quarter is we asked them, how long should we be on Zoom? What's the longest a Zoom session should be? And while some said it should always be shorter than 10 minutes, which I understand, generally it was 30 to 40 minutes was about the time when they said that felt effective. Now, depending on what's happening, it can be longer than that. So I'm going to suggest this, that we're going to be good at remote learning and doing synchronous experiences and teaching with students. And now I'm going to picture that in the classroom, where some of my students are actually joining me in my class, and I'm teaching those kids there, as well as that synchronous experience with those students that are home. So there are some technical issues that we're working through with it, but mostly what we want to, the technical issues are making sure that the students at home can hear clearly, that they can participate in group work that's happening during that. And depending on the schedule that we get to, and I'll propose something like this, and we're still working through that. But if we have a set of students that are in for the first blue-green pair in a week, and then we have them switch, so half are home, half are remote, and then we have them switch, you're actually getting a chance to see your teacher without too much break in between. So in fact, it's one class period of break, and then you get to see the teacher. So if something wasn't quite right in terms of what happened with remote learning, you're actually going to have time with that teacher when you're in school. So the way that we would probably, well, first of all, we have to be aware of families, and so any people in the same family kind of need to be on the same schedule. So we will likely do something alphabetic or something like that. We're still sort of looking at the data because it's actually a significant problem to not only ensure that half the kids are in class, but no individual class has too many kids in it for the size of the room. So since we have so many different types of schedules, it's actually more difficult to do this at New Trier than other places because of the great variety that they have. So on the freshman campus, we're trying to plan to have 500 students in on any one day, so we can have half the kids in for one green-blue pair and half the kids in for the other one. We're working on that. There's still a lot of work to do to make sure we can keep kids safe, keep our staff safe as well. So, but that's our picture and our model. Did I answer the question?
You did. I believe so, and just as much as you can. So nice job as far as the hybrid. Just a little bit to go down the road, a little bit of the safety and in-person precautions about eating lunch in this hybrid situation with social distancing. What about high-risk students? Does everyone have to come to school? And any other word of how they will actually social distance? If there are 500 students around, what are some of the plans being put into place? I know Paul Waechtler has been working on some of that, so.
Sure, I can start, and Paul certainly join in if there's things that I leave out. So we have a logistics committee that we have a good membership on for both campuses. That's just looking at exactly those types of questions. So we have at the Northfield campus, I've walked around with our physical plant services manager and just set up rooms. Like, how many desks can you fit in a room if those desks are going to be 6 feet apart? And so we had set up some sample rooms like that so we can get an idea. We actually have the entire cafeteria set up so all of the chairs are 6 feet apart. And so we can socially distance there. Clearly, you're going to have to start. So we've worked with our food service provider. You're not going to be able to stand in line and get your kind of made-to-order meal. It's going to be grab and go. I'm guessing we're going to encourage people to bring their own lunch as much as possible. We're going to have to expand the seating areas where you can eat lunch, and certainly for the parts of the year where it's nice out, get as many people to eat outside, enjoy the courtyards that we have, but also that's just a safer place to be. We're going to do the cleaning guidance that we have from ISBE. Obviously, we're going to have extra people doing those cleaning and disinfecting the classrooms and spaces that are used. The guidance says you must wear a mask when you're on campus. So those will be things that we're implementing and monitoring. And then even pathways through the building. So again, in Northfield, I'm going to say a little bit fortunate. We would encourage people to use the second floor as much as possible. That's out and open to get between buildings. And then the other ones, we're going to have a pattern. So say it's going to be clockwise or counterclockwise on certain floors too. So that it's probably, I can't say that you're always going to be 6 feet away from somebody as you go from class to class, but during those 5 minutes, you're not at least having people coming right the opposite direction of you. We're going to have patterns like that, similar to the grocery store of aisles that are one direction each way. And so we're going to have to spend some time, obviously, educating our students on how to move around the campus as safely as humanly possible. And then when we're in the classrooms, we're obviously going to continue that with where the desk placement are and where the teacher's going to be stationed and all of those types of things. So lots of good thinkings happen, and still some things to iron out.
And certainly, you know, adding to that list, bathrooms, cleaning, and both limiting, you know, limiting the numbers in there, water fountains. We're looking at all those things. And in terms of families, what we know is we're going to be able to offer a strong remote learning program throughout the entire year, because we're aware that there are families that are in situations where the student, whether it's themselves or someone in the family, shouldn't be at school, at least at this point in time. So all those situations absolutely will be honored. We always encourage, when we're open, we want students to come in. We think there's something very healthy about being together, even when they're socially distanced. The socialization does matter. So, but we will absolutely be working with families on that situation, especially early on, as you start to want to feel comfortable about what our procedures and processes are, in terms of being staying remote. It's the other way that gets a little hard, that because of the constraints on the building, we're going to have to be careful about the numbers that we allow in the building. So you can't just say, well, I'm coming to school every day. That's one thing for the community health that we are going to restrict, and work with families to bring as many kids in as we can, as often as we can.
All right, I can clear up a few of these questions. A question came in about masks. We need to follow the state guidelines on that, so we will be wearing masks. You know, faculty, staff, and students wearing masks. And then a few logistical about just the dates. You will find out your advisors in middle of July, and then we're hoping schedules go out on the early side of August. Those are taking us a little bit longer for all the obvious reasons we've been talking about, putting all of this together. A little bit about grading. Is grading going to change than what they experienced in the fourth quarter of 8th grade? Or will everything still be pass-fail?
It will be, and the guidance on this that came out from ISB this week, it will be typical grading. It won't be back to what you experience in 8th grade in 4th quarter, or what our new tourist students experience in 4th quarter. So of course, with that comes making sure that students are well prepared when they're given tests, given good feedback on their papers, and all that. So our teachers are very aware of the difference in the teaching and learning environment, and how that making sure that assessments and grades are appropriate, but it'll be a typical grading scenario.
So on the same grading topic, Paul, a little bit about just how homework works with block schedules, and for those who've had older siblings, test days, are those going to fall out the same way in this new schedule?
So
Yes.
Paul, you got it?
Okay, yeah, so good question. So the homework in the block schedule, which I tried to go over a little bit, but I know there's a lot of information. You're going to have homework given the days that you meet. That'll be due the next day you meet. And so let's just say you have a period 1 class. That class is going to meet on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And so when you meet on Monday, I would expect the teacher to probably say, okay, here's what we did. Here's the homework that you have. You'll have to complete that on Monday to be ready for your class on Tuesday. But then on Tuesday, when they go through the lesson, they will probably give you homework, and that homework won't be due till Thursday. So if you wanted to wait until Wednesday evening to get prepared for it, I'm sure that's what many of our students will do. So they're only focusing on probably 2 or 3 academic classes per evening during those block schedule days. That was part of it. And then the test days is a really good one. Obviously, we can't say period 2 is going to be our math test day is Tuesdays and Thursdays, because math might not even meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so we can't go by department by day. So we're going to have to look at some other ones. The other bonus is that because you only have a couple academic classes that meet on any of the block days, it's very unlikely that you would ever have 3 tests on the same day anyways. And so we're looking at a possibility of, maybe an opt-out. If you happen to have 3 tests, can you then organize that to get made up during the next block time or something like that the next day? And if not, you do it by perioding. So obviously when the periods are, so period 2 and 8 or something are allowed to test these days, but not the other one. So we've got some different options, but actually the block schedule helps with this just by the very nature of it. You actually can't have as many tests as you can during our traditional schedule.
Okay, this next question is for Paul. Sally, I know this is a tough subject out there because we might not have all the answers here, but extracurriculars, I think a lot of people are super excited, especially those of you getting on campus right now with some of our sports camps. Will sports and clubs and intramural still happen?
So to the extent they can, and that's a little bit of a vague answer, but it's a commitment on our part to use the flexibility that we're given and follow the guidelines that we're given. So that is happening this summer as we're bringing more students on campus, and as phase 4 comes in, we will be able to bring more on campus in more significant ways. Some are more difficult than others, and we know that. So if you're a football player, football is tough in this environment. The Science Olympiad team can probably figure things out. The French Culture Club probably can socially distance. Theater and music are 2 things that are a little bit specialized that we need to be thinking carefully about, especially the music part. So what does singing look like in an ensemble? What does orchestra look like? So our departments in those areas are working, again, to provide the best experience we can. So that impacts some of those extracurriculars as well. But this is an important part of the high school experience. It's a really important part of the freshman experience too. It's just a great way to connect with other students, with adults in a non-classroom environment with something that you're interested in. So we care about it, and we're going to offer as much as we can.
All right, thanks. There's a few questions coming in about the new student orientations on both of our campuses for freshmen and then sophomores. We know if freshmen are coming to campus, those tours are really important that our senior helpers lead. We are looking at a few different options right now about how to make those happen with safe social distancing, but now that we can have larger groups, and if that stays the same, hopefully we can get the group of advisor rooms together. That information will come out in your letters from your advisors about the different plans there. So we are working on that, and then sophomores are working on that. I know just hearing about the bridge builders work over at the Winnetka campus. Moving a little bit with, I know this is another one that's tough to answer, but transportation and buses a little bit with the schedule, because we know freshmen are a little bit more dependent on because they can't drive and how they're getting to school.
I can answer some of that, and Paul, if you have something to add. So we're working very carefully and closely with our bus companies, because I think that the safety starts on the trip to school. So so the guidelines again just came out. They've actually expanded the number of students that can be on a bus. That's all fine. We need to feel comfortable with what our plan is with that, but we will be providing bus service. When we think about that hybrid schedule, we will only have about half the kids on a bus who would normally be on the bus. So the transportation information is going out about who's interested in being on a bus. I guess I'm not sure if it went out yet, but if not, it's going out soon. And that will help us build the routes to make sure that we're able to do the transportation in a safe way.
Okay, Mr. Waechtler, a little bit more on the hybrid learning and our schedule with some Trevian days. What does that look like in the hybrid classroom? And then the amount of Zoom meetings that we foresee being scheduled throughout the week within the larger block schedules, and then also on Trevian days.
Sure. So, hybrid learning on a Trevian day. I think we're going to have to look at that because obviously, if you do everybody is just automatically, coming in on a pair of blue and green and then flip-flopping that. You obviously can't do that on the Trevian day. Does that need to become a remote learning day for people? Is there a way to decide? Different populations, might you need to have, say a student who has an IEP needs more touches, so do you have certain populations on, but not others? So we're still walking through that scenario, but we understand that you obviously can't just let everybody there on Mondays and then half the class the next day. So we're going to have to figure that out. Certainly remote learning is a possibility for that.
Yeah, especially as we're sort of start into this and we recognize that there's a lot about our plan, and as our plans get complete, there'll still be a lot that we don't know. So we will ease into bringing kids on campus in a way that makes sure they're safe. An obvious place to start is for Trevian Day. Let's have that be a remote learning day, and then bring kids in on the block schedule. There was another question there about just sort of the 35 minutes and what does it feel like when you're a remote student if the Zoom session is only 35 minutes. So our teachers are chunking out lessons in all kinds of different ways. Even when you're in the classroom, there's often independent work that goes on and some consultation with a teacher, which would look different if you're remote. But they'll continue to be learning, whether it be homework or some other activity, which they then are going to send in on Canvas that they finish in that period of time. It'll vary greatly, but it also will be for those that are in school. And so on the days when you're not remote, it will be that opportunity to have that connection. And again, as often as we can do that, we think that's a bonus. So we're trying to build that in. But we're not trying to work through half a class or anything like that. We have our curriculum mapped out in these courses for the year under this new block schedule. That's what our teachers are working on. And there'll be good, complete learning that happens.
Yeah, I think the 35-minute, I mean, like most of our kids have already told us they don't want to Zoom for much more than 35 anyways. And so I'm not as worried about using 35 minutes of Zoom during a Trevian day. What I actually think will happen is during the block time, they might Zoom for a while, take a break in the middle, and then say, hey, let's come back together the last 15, 20 minutes of class to summarize and go over what you needed to get prepared for the next one. So I think our teachers are working really hard to have some really good curriculum in both of those settings, Trevian days and the block schedule.
And that's on our teachers have the autonomy, 40, 45, 50, 60 minutes of Zoom. Our teachers are using standards to evaluate the usefulness of it, and we need to make sure that it's useful for learning for students. And it very well may be, but I will tell you, just based on maybe all of our experience over the last 4 months, whatever it's been, too much time on Zoom is really hard. And so we want to be careful of what that balance is. So.
Yeah, well, especially class after class, right? Like if you did maybe 50 or 60 minutes of Zoom in a row in one class, you can probably handle it. But if you did that 5 block sessions in a row, by the end of that 5th period, you would probably be pretty wiped out.
Yeah, it's a little hard.
All right, well, thank you, because you just answered a few of the questions that were a little bit more specific to students with maybe attention issues or 504 plan, how that would look in a 70-minute.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helped with some of that. Are there any other different schedules for students with IEPs or plans on their attendance versus other students? Maybe for Dr. Sally there.
Say it one more time.
So with students, there's a question with students with IEPs, whether they would be required to be on campus more or less than other students.
I gotcha. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. So one of the things that is clear in the guidance, and it's clear in our philosophy as well, is that there are sets of students that in order to access learning need to be on campus more frequently. So we're looking at that carefully, and making sure we can provide as much access for them as we possibly can. If your student is has an IEP or is in a specific program, we'll be communicating as soon as we can about what our plans are over the summer.
Okay, and we're wrapping up here on our time. I think we can perhaps end with just how we are making decisions overall. What factors are we taking into account, you know, as we move forward over these next few weeks, and when will more information be coming out?
Yeah. So so we all know it's a very complicated situation, and there are still continue to be unknowns. So the amount of research and reading that all of us are doing in the administration and on the board is significant. We want to make sure that we're making decisions based on the best science for the health, safety, and well-being of our students, and that we're able to deliver strong curriculum, strong learning for all of our students. So we certainly have heard from parents and students in both focus groups and in surveys that have started to develop our thinking on that. What you might hear if you join our June 13th board meeting or read the board briefs that come out after the board meeting, you'll hear the next level of planning. So we expect to be able to talk about that yearly schedule and have that approved, which is the first one level of planning. I don't think we'll quite be ready to actually commit to one particular type of opening or another, but I do just want to emphasize that bringing students into campus is one of our main goals. So that's one of the things that we're really working toward. What other factors do we take into account? Yes, you know, we miss the school, being the school where kids are around and learning and being the great kids that they are. I mean, we all went into this because we actually really like high school kids and the way they challenge us and the way they learn and the way they start to learn about themselves. And it's just not the same experiencing that remotely. So we just care so much about that. That's why we're in the profession that we are, and we're just trying to work towards that.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say, I know. I don't want to speak for Dr. Saad, but I'll say being a principal with 1,000 kids on campus is a whole lot more fun than being a principal in remote learning. So I definitely miss having kids around and the energy they bring. One of the best parts of summer was just starting the athletic training we're doing now, and I went out there and just kind of sat on the berm and then watched them, and it just felt so great to have students around on campus and seeing their smiles and laughs, and hopefully we'll have more opportunities to do that as we move forward. Certainly committed to making your freshman year, your transition to New Trier as successful as possible, and know how important it is to get populations on campus when possible, just to build those relationships and get to know your sons and daughters, which again is the best parts of our job.
I wanted to say a few last pieces too, as far as just some logistics, but also as we talk as a family too, and we look at, I think we're gonna look back on these days sometimes and say, wow, that was a crazy way I started out my high school chapter. And as it just gets better and better as we get back on campus more, as the country works through this whole pandemic piece, it's unusual. We're all in it together, and that's what kind of feels good to me, as far as we're just going to keep trying to make it better and more comfortable as we get in. But I know there's just a lot of anxiety and excitement that starts with the start of a freshman year, and we're just going to ease that. So anything that you are thinking about or hearing about, or please don't feel hesitant to contact us about students. We're here working all summer too, and getting these plans put together. I have a few housekeeping pieces. We sent a reminder with some other updates. summer reading for those kids listening right now. That might not be what you wanted to hear, but you can always find that summer reading on our English page. We're trying to direct you to our website. We are constantly updating the incoming 9th grade page if you need more information, as long as and also as our just the remote learning. Our website's a great place to be. If you haven't liked us on Instagram or Facebook, that's another way to get some exciting information coming out. And I still have about 130 families that are out there that haven't done their PowerSchool enrollment. And that is, some people are confused because they're like, wait, I registered for classes in February. But this is where we have, every year you will sign off on authorizations and then just complete and update your addresses and your residency, all of those pieces. So please don't ignore those emails from Judy Seekerman, because we're gonna try and hunt you down a little bit if you haven't finished that. So thanks for letting me get in the public service announcement there on all of those. But I think we're, you know, there's a few other questions that are, you know, coming in that are a little bit more specific that we can try and answer. And also just knowing that if you had friends miss this, we will be posting this on our website too, this whole webinar.
Absolutely.
Great.
Anything else for the good of the order?
I think that's it. So thanks so much for joining us this evening. It was great to have you, and certainly looking forward to meeting you guys in person in the coming months.
All right,
Thank you
thanks a
so
lot.
much.
Take care.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.